Hello everyone, Eric Hörst back from my summer hiatus. It's been a while since we've last met here at the Training Cafe, but I hope you have a cup of coffee and are ready to talk some training here for the next 30 minutes or so. Now, I've had a little bit of internet issues here. Hopefully my Wi-Fi is working fine. If there's any issues that you're seeing from the viewer's end, please drop me a line or put a note into the comments box, and if you type in a training question, I'll be happy to answer that a little bit later on in the broadcast as well. So first things first, want to tell you just a bit about what I've been up to. Quite busy between work and travel, during the summer. Try to, do some traveling out west or to Europe. This year I had some climber festivals that I was committed to work at business-wise, do some clinics at. I was at a climbing research conference in Squamish that I'll tell you about in my next podcast that'll come out in September. Some interesting stuff to share from that climbing research, climbing medicine conference. And I'm back home, working in my home office today and doing this training cafe and, trying to get in some training, preparation for the autumn season here where I live in the East. The best climbing is October, November. So I have, 5-6 weeks to dial things in, hopefully to be prepared to get on a few project routes this fall. And I think, many of you are probably in that same situation. The summer's kind of winding down. It's the dog days of August. Perhaps you've done your climbing travel for the summer and you're back in the climbing gym or in the home gym. And if you have some plans for the autumn season, when the best weather, the cool conditions for sport climbing, bouldering, trotting, whatever your preference is, why not make a plan now so that you can arrive at the climb, at the area, in October, November, December, whatever your peak season is in year's end, be prepared to climb your very, very best. So I'm going to give you a few tips here. And again, here in the Training Cafe, I do field questions on any topic on training, mental training technique, diet, nutrition, injury. I'll do my best to answer the question. And if I can't, I'll try to give you a reference or a resource to where you can seek some answers on your question. So again, use the comments box and you can type something in question-wise, brief and to the point, and I'll address it in just a bit. Of course, the Training Cafe, we do tend to enjoy coffee together. And so this is that time where if you have a cup of coffee or a glass of something else, raise it up. Climbers around the world unite at the Training Cafe. Sipping coffee together is kind of a spiritual connection between us here in the climbing world. Climbing and coffee go together like hand in glove, at least for me and for most of the people I know. Also, I want to give a shout out. I don't know if you follow the World Cup climbing scene the way I do. It's, ramping up towards the Olympics next summer in Paris. And the World Championship in Bern just occurred a few weeks ago, and the first kind of tickets to the Olympics were given out. It's been a long World Cup season, bouldering, lead climbing, and then the combined World Championship, which took place. And I wanted to give some shout outs to a few climbers that I know and follow closely. Alex Megos, a bronze medal in the men's lead at the World Championship. Natalia Grossman, a 5th place finish in bouldering, and fellow American climber Brooke Raboutou, a 3rd place, a bronze medal in bouldering. And also Yannick Flohé, a German climber, a few years younger than Alex, but every bit as strong, has a bright future. He competed in the World Cup and is, I think, someone to watch heading into the Olympics and beyond. And then 18 or actually 17-year-old Annie Sanders, or maybe she's 16. She's young, but she performed incredibly well as for Team America. And she made it into the finals for the combined and got 8th place overall. And that's really exciting for such a young talent. And I am happy to tell you that all of the climbers I just mentioned are PhysiVantage athletes, which is one of the reasons I follow them so closely. And before I move on to talking about training for the fall season, one more thing I wanted to share with you is one of our flagship products with PhysiVantage Nutrition is our pre-workout, pre-climb performance drink called Sendure-X. We rebranded it. It was Endure-X, but we changed it to Sendure-X. Send your X, X being your project. So it's a nice little pun there, and it's a trademarkable name. And that was important to us because I just invested a lot of money into getting NSF certification, sports certification, which means for people competing in the Olympics or World Cups where you are drug tested, you can rest assured that the product is completely clean. I mean, all PhysiVantage products are tested. The ingredients, the raw ingredients are tested, the finished products are tested. So we know they're clean, but the NSF certification is like the gold standard where there's actually a third party body that tests for banned substances. And so getting that certification is a big deal and an expensive thing for a small company like PhysiVantage, but we want to give our athletes the best products we can. And we certainly appreciate the support those athletes give us. And you know, the everyday climbers out there watching this, the weekend warriors like myself and perhaps like you can benefit from sports nutrition, and PhysiVantage is the only climbing specific nutrition truly designed from scratch for climbers in mind. Okay, so let's move on here and talk about preparing for the autumn season. So coming out of the summer season, hopefully you sent some rigs, sent some hard boulders. Hopefully you're healthy, but if you're not completely healthy, if you have any aches or pains or tweaks, that is issue number one that you want to address before you start your fall, all in, go all in on your fall climbing season. So, for me, unfortunately, I came back from my summer climbing trip. I was pulling pockets for a few weeks in Wyoming at 10 Sleep and Wild Iris, and I came back with a little bit of medial epicondylitis. It's not a chronic condition yet, and so the key is for me to kind of nip it in the bud. It's been a few weeks of pain when I pull on a pocket, or if I even do a pull-up, it hurts. And so that's a warning sign. If your elbows hurt doing just a basic pull-up, palms away, that's a warning sign that there's something brewing there. And so it's good to always heed the warning of those early pain signals. And I'm beginning to do, daily a trigger point release, the pronator teres muscle here, doing massage therapy, doing a lot of frequent stretching, and doing various wrist exercises to strengthen the pronator muscle, reverse wrist curls, and avoid things that provoke the pain. So avoid doing pull-ups, do chin-ups instead, or do some training in the neutral position. That reduces the stress on that pronator muscle and tendon, and removes a provoking factor from that medial epicondyle. Consuming collagen daily before you train, which is what I do. I have 2 scoops before a workout or before rehab to have the nutrition, the collagen-specific amino acids in the bloodstream when I'm doing my loading. You want to feed tendons before you train. You want to feed muscles after you train. So whey protein after you train, and collagen, like supercharged collagen before you train. That's the proven, evidence-based way to support connective tissues and muscles. So whatever your injury or pain might be, finger, shoulder, whatever, do some rehab exercises, or hopefully you're pain-free and you can just, forge ahead into the fall season. Okay, so number 1 is deal with any tweaks or pains if you have them now, rather than letting them linger into the autumn climbing season. Number 2, as you kind of formulate your training the next few weeks, is what is your big goal for the autumn season? Like, is it a specific route that you have in mind, a specific boulder that you have in mind? I do have 2 routes in mind. They're more steep, endurance-oriented routes at the Red River Gorge. And so I want to kind of top off my tank when it comes to my aerobic capacity and, my anaerobic reserve. That's something that I can tailor my training the next 6 weeks to have me prepared. So I'm not trying to, open up a new level of strength or power. That's not what I need for these routes. I need to maintain whatever strength or power I have right now. So I want to preserve that with once or twice a week training of those exercises, that energy system. But the bulk of my training, let's say 80% of my climbing specific training, is going to be more focused on the energy systems I'll need to do my route. And you might even take it as far as training the types of movements, especially if it's a boulder problem with a tricky crux move or weird body positioning. You can build a simulator if you have enough knowledge of the boulder problem to do that. Again, training with a project in mind is smart training. And it's a time to kind of dial back. If you've been doing weight training this summer, I would just forget that for the next few weeks until performance season is over. Then afterwards you can do another, if you feel you really need it, do some weight training during your winter off season. But bench pressing heavy, squatting heavy, deadlifting heavy, doing any type of bodybuilder type workout is not going to help you send your project a month or two from now. In fact, it could potentially hold you back, because lifting weights is a heavy signal, or is a acute signal to our bodies to store glycogen in the muscles that you're lifting heavily with. And so if you do a lot of lifting with your leg muscles, let's say posterior chain muscles, you're sending a signal to store glycogen, sugar and water in your muscles. And you will put on, or if you've been lifting this summer, you have put on a couple of pounds in those areas that you really don't want for climbing your very, very best in performance season. So by removing the heavy weight training, heading into your peaking period, your body will stop storing that extra glycogen and water in those muscles. It'll still store it in your climbing muscles because you're training those, but not the weightlifting muscles. And just in doing that, typically I'll lose a couple of pounds when I cut out the weight training heading into my peak performance season. Again, everybody has special needs. And again, if you're rehabbing an injury, you might need some weight exercises for that. But in terms of doing a comprehensive building strength program with weights, that's not something you do the last month or two before your performance season. That's something you do during the off season. Number 3 item to kind of get you prepared for the autumn climbing season is just gradually ramp up your volume of climbing. If you're out at the boulders or crags in October or November, putting in long sessions, long days, you need that climbing specific endurance, kind of that systemic endurance. It's a brain thing, it's a heart thing, it's obviously a muscle thing as well. And the best way to train that is to do that. And so doing short home wall bouldering sessions, or some system wall sessions, or doing a few routes at the climbing gym isn't going to build that stamina that you need, for longer days at the boulders or crags. You need to go out and start doing more time either at the gym or outside in the coming weeks. And so one thing that I propose is to ramp up your climbing volume by about 10% a week over the next 4 or 5 weeks. And so by increasing the volume, I'm talking about total minutes of climbing. Now, if you're doing a limit bouldering session, you just can't ramp that up 10% a week. That isn't possible, and high volume, high intensity training is a pathway to injury and overtraining. I'm talking about the things that are submaximal. If you're doing boulders that are several grades below your limit, kind of like 4x4s or some circuits, or you're putting on a rope at the gym and doing submaximal lead routes for volume, build up to doing 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 roped routes, a few grades below your limit. If your limit's say 512A, then go to the gym and climb lots of 10s and 11s, or 9s, 10s, and 11s. Things that aren't going to take you to total failure, things that you can do repeatedly over and over and over again for a few hours and build that stamina. Again, it's a brain, heart, and muscle thing that you need to train up, and you can only get that kind of all-day stamina, and build it by putting in those longer sessions. And then finally, number 4, getting ready for the autumn send season. And this one is especially for those folks who specialize in really hard boulders, steep, small holds, powerful moves, and people like me, sport climbers, who are doing long overhanging sport routes. And that tip is to consider if you can drop a few pounds of body comp. I talked about cutting out the weight training, and just in doing that, you will lose a few pounds due to less water and sugar storage in the muscles, but also tightening up your nutrition a little bit. In the next 4 to 6 weeks. I'm running a few pounds heavy. I'm not embarrassed to say that. I was on a long road trip where I tend to err on the side of a calorie surplus just to support recovery. If I'm on a road trip with friends, I tend to drink more beers and have more meals out at restaurants than I would if I'm at home working and training. And so all of that added up over a month, I came home a few pounds heavy. And so I can easily correct that by dialing, we're just removing a few of those empty calorie things. Like, I went out to the store a week or two ago and bought some Athletic Brewing near beer. It's, no alcohol, like 50 calorie a can, pale ale. It doesn't taste as good as the real thing, but it's close enough that I can enjoy one with my, tacos or whatever I'm having, my piece of pizza, and I'm not taking in those empty calories of the alcohol. And cutting out a few things like that, desserts, cutting down on your portion size a little bit, avoiding fried foods, fast foods, those things that have this big calorie hit because they're so dense in calories, and eating more, vegetables, things that have fiber and are filling but aren't really calorie dense. I consume a lot of protein powders, perhaps you do too. That's a good way to get the protein you need to support and accelerate recovery without consuming a lot of extra calories as you would if you were, eating hamburgers every night, let's say, or drinking a lot of whole milk or other things that have a lot of extra calories from fat and carbs in them. A good whey protein or collagen protein has no sugar or carbs added, at least if it's a high quality product. Dialing in all those things, I hope to arrive at the Red River Gorge in early October, 3 to 5 pounds lighter than I am right now. That's the goal. And that can make a big difference on that limit boulder or on that 100-foot overhanging sport route. 5 pounds is a massive difference. As long as you're not starving yourself to get there or doing other unhealthy behaviors. But I am healthy, right? For my age. And, I'm not at risk of succumbing to red S or anorexia. I can dial down my diet, as I'm sure most of you can as well, and do it in a safe way that it's not anything, that is concerning or problematic and is going to detract from performance. But losing a few pounds in a safe way is what elite athletes do across the board in strength to ratio sports. And pretty much every pro climber I know knows how to dial it in, strength-wise, weight-wise, power-wise, heading into competition season or their project season. And then they, let loose a little more during the off season, and therefore their weight will vacillate a few pounds, maybe 5 pounds, a few kilos, in season, out season. And that is, I think, a good way to do it. It allows you to enjoy those, sugary or, those pleasure foods, but you can sacrifice those as a disciplined athlete does during performance season, or at least consume less of those things in the name of reaching your goals. And I mean, reaching goals, is not just about training harder, it's about discipline. And, the pro climbers I work with, most of them are highly disciplined, ridiculously disciplined, far more than me at this stage of the game. And it inspires me and it informs me that, yes, that is what it takes. You don't climb 515 or V15 or stand on a World Cup podium without doing a lot of things right and very few things wrong. And having a high level of discipline is part of the game, no doubt about it. So there you go. There are some tips for getting yourself prepared for whenever your next climbing trip is, your autumn sense season. If you're like me, it's going to be October, November. And I hope in future training cafes to give you some updates on my progress, and I'd be happy to hear from you in the comments box in future episodes of Training Cafe, how things are going for you. So we're about 20 minutes into the cafe here. I've got about 10 minutes left before I need to run. And so let me just run through a few questions here. And first up is from John Woods, good exercises for grip strength. And John, I could do an hour on the cafe talking about that. It really depends how experienced you are, how long you've been climbing, what is your training history? What can your tendons withstand? A climber of a decade, their tendons can withstand a lot more than a climber of like just 1 year. Tendons take many years to get stronger. Muscles get stronger in weeks and months. Tendons get strong in months and years. And so if the muscles get stronger than the tendons, that's when you can get tendon pulley injuries, various types of tendonitis, and things that can really set you back. And so it's about a prudent training program design. Beginners should mostly climb for their finger training. People their first year or two shouldn't do anything too crazy like on a hangboard or campus board. After a year or two of climbing, you will develop some finger strength for your body weight. You will develop technique and mental skills and be moving more efficiently. And that is the time, after a year or two, that most people are ready to do some more specific training. Some fingerboard hangs or doing some of these finger edge lifts, standing finger training. Mixing it up is important. If you just do one thing, if you just hangboard, that can be too specific and cause joint issues or local tendon issues. So doing a few different things, picking wisely, changing up things. If you climb in an area that has pockets, you want to, do some isolation training of, 2-finger pocket teams. Again, that's not a beginner thing, but it's a little bit more advanced. Campus training, it was like the last thing you would graduate to, maybe not till you've been climbing 3 to 5 years or more, where you're laddering and doing dynamic exercises. It's quite stressful on the shoulders, elbows, and fingers. And if you don't have good control, if you don't have enough strength to control yourself appropriately in those powerful movements, it can be a disaster. And same thing as finger training or even climbing in a high state of fatigue. That is something you want to avoid. So, warm up, train your fingers fresh, do some limit boulders, climb some near limit routes on a rope. That's a good start. And then eventually, I would consult a coach to work with you personally that can take all those, issues into account. And, the state of the art is a very individualized program, not something that's a cookie cutter program that you got off the internet or you just copied off of somebody else, because that isn't, of course, specific to you. So hopefully that gives you some starting points there. Okay, it looks like we have a few comments or questions here from Fabio in Italy. How are you doing, Fabio? He says he has a little newborn that's occupying most of his days. Takes 45 minutes to an hour of time to train 3 days a week. What would you suggest for these sessions? He's thinking 1 max strength for the upper bodies and fingers, so that would be more climbing specific. 1 aerobic session, which is more of an endurance, very submaximal finger session, and an all body workout. And he adds, if you have any suggestions to optimize this kind of program, I'd appreciate it. Yeah, I think that's really smart. Everything you outlined there, I can certainly relate to what it's like having newborns, although it's been, over 20 years since my sons were born. But, those first few years can be challenging. Having the tools to train at home is the most efficient thing, because you can get little bits of training in, when the baby's sleeping or between house activities or activities with your wife or shopping or whatever. If you have to travel to a gym, that just adds more complexity and time. So for anybody with small kids, I think training at home, which is what I did almost exclusively for the first 10 years. And as the kids got older, they came in and trained with me. Starting age 5 or 6, they would just climb around on the home climbing wall and learn to do pull-ups and eventually learn to lift weights. And, by age 10 or 11, they were climbing harder than me, so watch out. 10 years from now, Fabio, you might have a little crusher on your hands. But in any case, yeah, you want to hit all the bases. You want to load your fingers at least once a week to maintain tendon strength, to maintain as much, climbing specific strength. You're not going to break through to new levels training once a week, but once a week of a strength, power, finger pulling workout will hopefully maintain you, especially if you're a young person, 20s or early 30s, that may be enough to maintain. If you're upper 30s or older, you might need 2 sessions a week, because just your body, is changing and it's tougher to maintain strength. I know that firsthand, as you get older. But yeah, 1 strength session and then a second session, maybe doing repeaters on a hangboard where you're doing a lot of volume, but nothing to failure, nothing that's maximal. So that is more aerobic, maybe with some anaerobic elements. If you're getting pumped but not failing, then it's both aerobic and anaerobic lactic. You could do Frenchy pull-ups, or pull-up intervals, which would be more of an endurance workout, as opposed to weighted pull-ups. 5 sets of 5 is my go-to for max strength training of the pulling muscles. So yeah, those 2 sessions should keep all of those energy systems kind of hopefully where they're at, so you're not backtracking. And then if you get a day to go outside climbing or go to the gym, you should have enough strength to have some fun, and not maybe break through to new levels, but still climb at your current level. And then as hopefully time becomes more available, or maybe if you can get more training tools at home and more time to train on them at home, you can expand your training. Maybe you have a third day that you're doing climbing specific training. And I do like that you said one day of more general body working out. And I would throw into that some running or biking, doing some push exercises, push-ups, dips. If you have a few, dumbbells to do shoulder press or rotator cuff exercises. You don't need to do any extensive weight training, but doing some things for muscle balance, reverse wrist curls, that's all really smart stuff to do. And of course, training the core, you could do that on your climbing days or your all body days. So what you described is a good base program. If you can expand it to doing 3 days of, climbing muscle exercises and then 2 days of kind of all body, that would be awesome, because then you're being active 5 days a week. And in that case, maybe you are elevating your game a little bit as time goes on. Okay, so we're coming up on 30 minutes here, and I've gotten through at least a handful of questions here. So I think this might be a good time to wrap things up. Again, I apologize for the, I guess it's been almost 3 months, perhaps since the last Training Cafe. Life gets in the way, and I need to, when I have the opportunity, get out and climb. My window for climbing is shrinking as I get older, and so it's good to get in those training sessions, and it's good to work and pay the bills, but it's also good to get out of the house and get to the boulders and crags. That is what life is about. That's what we climb for ultimately, is that experience. Grade doesn't really matter. You got to get out and just do it, and hopefully you can find ways to do that more often as well. That's the best payoff, and it's the most the best way to really enrich your life is to get more quality days in at the crags with your quality partners and friends. That is memorable stuff that will be with you for life. So let's all try to do more of that. Again, thank you so much for stopping by the Training Cafe. I'm going to try to get back into a rhythm of doing this every couple of weeks. I can't promise I'll succeed at that, but I'm going to try my best every 2 to 3 weeks to do a Training Cafe heading through the fall and into the winter season. I hope to see you then. Until next time, be safe, be strong, climb on, my friend.